Madam Clerk, would you please publish the verdict?
In the courts of the 6th Judicial Circuit in and for Pasco County, Florida, State of Florida versus Curtis Judson Reeves, case number 2014 CF 216 CF AXES. Information for count 1, murder in the second degree. Verdict: we the jury finds as follows. The defendant is not guilty, so say we all this 25th day of February 2022, juror number 2, foreperson. In the courts of the 6th Judicial Circuit in and for Pasco County, Florida, State of Florida versus Curtis Judson Reeves, case number 2014 CF 216 CF AXES. Information for count 2, aggravated battery. Verdict: we the jury finds as follows. The defendant is not guilty, so say we all this 25th day of February 2022, juror number 2, foreperson.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Does counsel for either side wish to poll the jury?
We do, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the deputy clerk will poll the jury. That simply means that she will ask each of you individually if the verdict she read is your verdict. If it is, you need only answer yes. If it is not, of course, you should answer no. Madam Clerk, will you please poll the jury?
Juror number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 2, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 3, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 5, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 6, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are now, or will be in a moment, once I say the magic words, you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations. You are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. So, on behalf of the state of Florida and everyone here, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your long enduring service during this difficult case. You guys have been real troopers. It's been a long few weeks, and I want to thank you for performing the job that you have just done, and I hope you didn't find it too burdensome and you'll be willing to do the job again when the call comes. You're definitely good for at least a year, though, so at this time I will now discharge you from your service as jurors, and you are free to go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Grab your phones. Grab your phones. Did he get his phone?
Yes,
Did he? Okay. Okay.
Live coverage continues on WFLA Now after the court proceedings.
All right, Mr. Reeves, the jury having returned a verdict of not guilty as to count 1 and count 2, you are free to go. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful time. Good luck.
Breaking news on WFLA Now. Here's J.B. Buno.
Curtis Reeves, not guilty in Pasco County Court of second-degree murder and aggravated battery for the 2014 shooting death of Chad Olson in a Wesley Chapel movie theater in a dispute that occurred over texting. Curtis Reeves being embraced by members of his family, his closest friends, those who have been here supporting him in court. On the other side of the courtroom, Nicole Olson, emotional as she leaves the courtroom.
Let's go. You ready?
Continuing our coverage here live, everybody, on WFLA Now. JB Buno here with you live, and our streaming coverage continues. We are expecting to hear reaction in interviews after everybody filters out of the courtroom here. So if you want to hear reaction, we're expecting to hear it perhaps on both sides from attorneys and perhaps members of the family. Stick around. Let's go back live to Dade City, Florida. Curtis Reeves,
Yes, I did get your order. Thank you.
with a look of relief on his face after 8 years waiting to hear the words not guilty, and he got it twice. Not guilty on second-degree murder, not guilty on aggravated battery. His team of attorneys arguing self-defense. Now the courtroom audio coming back. Let's listen. If you've been with us here on Facebook Live, YouTube Live over the course of this 2-week trial, you might have formed an opinion of whether you thought Curtis Reeves was guilty of murdering Chad Olson that day in January 2014 when he pulled out his handgun and shot him in the chest during the previews of a Monday matinee. Some of you might have felt that he was not guilty, acting in self-defense when Chad Olson turned around in his seat, threw popcorn in his face. Regardless of how you feel between guilty or not guilty, you can't deny that it was an emotional gut punch in this courtroom on both sides. One side, the outcome that they had waited for 8 years. The other side, the outcome that they had feared for 8 years. And this here on your screen is the winning side. Curtis Reeves found not guilty, and you can see in his face gratitude. He's talking there with Rick Escobar, defense attorney, who spent 3 hours in his closing arguments earlier today. Also there, Dino Michaels, major part of the case as well. We're going to be going over your reaction from Facebook Live, YouTube Live, in the comment section. We're live on hashtag AJB on WFLA Now. We're going to be featuring your reaction if you use that hashtag. I know that so many in the Tampa Bay area, so many across the state of Florida you've been following this story for 8 years when it was unsuccessfully attempted to be tried as a stand your ground case. That determination coming down in 2017, getting to the point here where Curtis Reeves was to be tried for second-degree murder, and now walking out free. Again, we do expect to have coverage, folks, from outside of the courtroom, where we're expected to hear from attorneys. Making closing arguments today was Scott Rosenwasser. He is the attorney with the prosecution. We also have Rick Escobar, who represents the defense, and we're expecting to hear the reaction from both sides, as well as members of the family as well. JB here with you live, folks, on WFLA Now. And Nicole Olson, Chad Olson's wife, who was shot in the hand that day. Her hand, the middle point, if you will, or she had her hand on Chad Olson as the bullet came from the gun of Curtis Reeves traveling in her husband's direction. It would strike her in the finger, injuring her hand, but it would be a fatal gunshot wound for Chad Olson, 43 years old that day, when he died in the Wesley Chapel movie theater. Again, a dispute that occurred all over texting. Let's get to some of the comments, everybody, on WFLA Now. And I'm going to monitor our live feeds. This is what we do as far as monitoring, as we take a look at some of the video from the trial. We're going to be monitoring the live feeds and trying to bring up any shots of podiums or microphones or interviews as they happen. So we'll try our very best to bring you those the moment that they begin. But you'll have to excuse, I'm sure, both sides as they are just processing this news. If it's been 8 years, the very least that they're going to ask for is just 8 minutes to just sit down and process what has just transpired with a 6-person jury finding Curtis Reeves not guilty on both of the counts, those counts being second-degree murder as well as aggravated battery. We're going to feature some of the comments here, everybody, on WFLA Now. You can use hashtag HeyJB to give us your reaction. And I'm going to be honest, I'm really looking for the reaction for those in the Tampa Bay area, those who've been following this story, those who every time you drive by that movie theater, you say, that's where the Curtis Reeves shooting happened, or that's where the Chad Olson shooting happened. People in this community have been waiting for what was going to be the resolution of this case for nearly a decade. And so I'm really hoping to hear from some of the folks in our community here in Tampa Bay. And you can use hashtag HeyJB to perhaps give us a little bit of insight as to what you were feeling when you heard of this story 8 years ago and what your reaction is now in the aftermath of the verdict being read aloud that Curtis Reeves is being found not guilty. I'll get to some of the comments in the Facebook Live comments section. And let's start here, and I'm looking, I'm seeing a lot of comments, and they're scrolling in so fast, we're going to try to pluck them as quickly as we can. They're coming in extremely fast, but again, to explain how the system works, if you'd like to have your voice heard or to ask a question, you can use hashtag HeyJB. If you don't want your comment and your profile picture and everything featured on a news broadcast, just don't use the hashtag. We'll let your comments scroll on by, and you can continue commenting back and forth with your fellow viewers here on WFLA Now. All right, let's get to some of the comments. I think a lot of the comments are really focused on Nicole Olson, who we've been seeing video of, cutaway shots of, really since day one of the trial. Echo Love saying hashtag HeyJB, prayers for Nicole and her daughter. And Echo saying here, sorry, the system failed you. So Echo, one of our commenters who believes that this is not the right verdict. And those, listen, if you've been following this case, as far as the trial from last Monday when it began, you're best equipped to form an opinion on whether or not you feel the verdict was correct, because if you've been following it from day one, you have heard a lot of the evidence, you've heard the testimony. As I just pay attention to our feeds. Michelle Hernandez, hashtag HeyJB. I'm in Tampa, and I remember this well. Today is a sad day. No justice, or I think it's no justice, no peace, is the comment here from Michelle Hernandez. Get to some other comments. Again, this is what we're doing. We're going to feature some of your reaction as we await the real reaction from Dade City. Again, we're expecting interviews to take place with attorneys from both sides, as well as perhaps family members as well. Will Nicole Olson be able to speak in the aftermath of hearing not guilty, not guilty? We're going to find out. We had heard that she was planning to speak after a verdict was read. She wanted her voice to be heard. But will Nicole Olson, now that it has actually arrived, this verdict, is she going to be able to speak, losing her husband at the young age of 43 years old? I'm going to look for some more comments with our hashtag system here. And again, monitoring the feeds, because I know everyone is here to hear the reaction from the courtroom, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. There's an opinion here from Stephanie Thompson. Oh wait, Stephanie, I'll get to your comment. I will, yeah. Shannon talking about self-defense, as we now have official cutout audio from the courtroom feed. That's what that beep was. Shannon, I'm going to get to your question about the defense argument and the self-defense argument. We're going to kind of lay that out for you because that's the reason why we have a not guilty verdict. So we're going to talk about the case that was presented by Rick Escobar and his team. Going to read a few, pluck a couple more. I also heard that as well, Megan. I think that might have been a Freudian slip, but well, you know what? Let's start with that. Megan O'Neill, I have to admit, I thought it was a little bizarre as well. Megan O'Neill saying #KJB, the judge butchered her words at the end. That was just sickening. No death is worthy of that. Yeah, I think Judge Susan Bathel said something to the effect of, I hope you had a wonderful time. It was so, I got to be honest, it was so jarring that I thought to myself, is this a murder trial? I too, I don't want to put words into her mouth until I hear it back, but I'm not remembering exactly word for word what she said for an exact quote for you, because it was just very bizarre to hear that come from the mouth of a judge during a murder trial. But I've seen a bunch of comments, people saying, well, that was very bizarre etiquette by the judge in this case. Shannon Ann, what was the gist of his defense? It can't be that he was afraid of popcorn. The gist of the defense was that Curtis Reeves was struck either by a fist or by a cell phone, and that he was in fear for his life due to an escalated amount of behavior from Chad Olson in the row in front of him in that movie theater. The flash of light that you see in the surveillance video, it was brought up time and time again as to whether or not that was, in fact, a cell phone, or whether or not that was the reflective material on Curtis Reeves' sneaker, and whether or not that played a key factor in this case. We talked about it after the jury began deliberations, where I said that could potentially be the most key question in this case, whether or not the jury thought that reflection of light in the surveillance footage was that of a cell phone that struck Mr. Reeves, or whether or not that really was his sneaker as he kind of moved in his seat. The jurors themselves know, but after about 3+ hours of deliberating, they were able to unanimously come to this verdict of not guilty. Yeah, so Carol, I want to go back to the just go back to the judge here for just a second, because this is what I heard too. Carol Ellison, #KJB, the judge thanked everyone for a wonderful time. Yeah, I've covered a lot of murder cases. That's not one that I've ever heard. I have to be honest, and I know that it's grueling work to be in a courtroom and hear these facts, and extended hours, and this has been going on since really around 8 a.m. this morning when everyone arrived for the day. It's been a long day in court, but I have to pass along. I've never heard those being the final words in a court proceeding from a judge in a murder trial. That's new for me. Michael Boardman, #HeyJB, says excellent verdict. There were many who called for this as an exercise in legal proceedings for how to defend a self-defense case, self-defense incident in the state of Florida. People who felt that this was the only verdict from the beginning, and people who have been commenting at me on Facebook and YouTube saying that this is going to be not guilty, that the evidence in this case just doesn't add up to the charges that were presented. And with that, Stephanie Thompson says, #KJB, I think that they overreached by charging with second-degree murder. Might have been found guilty if the state went for voluntary manslaughter. Were the charges appropriate? These are now legal questions that legal analysts are going to have to delve in on, and we're going to have additional coverage in the days ahead on WFLA.com about the interpretation of this decision and this verdict by the 6-member jury here in Pasco County. Again, for those of you just joining us, we are waiting for a feed outside of the courtroom, and that feed is expected to bring us reaction from the attorneys that you're seeing here and replayed footage from the last several days. Rick Escobar, Dino Michaels, I'm sure are going to be elated to walk up in front of the microphone and have their moment of victory as they successfully defended their client, Curtis Reeves, a decorated Tampa Bay law enforcement veteran and retiree. Let's get to some other hashtag HJB comments as we wait for that feed to become available to us. Laura, I see your comment with hashtag HJB. We'll bring that one up. And seeing some others come in here on YouTube, on Facebook as well. And we'll see. Yeah, all right. Yeah, Paul will bring up your comment. Yeah, Courtney, I think that you're right too. All these comments that I'm just getting them ready in the queue here, folks, to bring them up. Okay, that's a pretty honest assessment of the judge. We'll get to your comment, Matthew. And Nikita, we're going to get to yours as well. All right, let's bring up some of the new comments that have just come in. Again, Carol was, yeah, Carol, I heard this right too. And I just want to play it back for a moment. Maybe I can. Maybe there's an opportunity for me to play it back if I can. And we can hear the judge's words. We'll have to do that. I'll have to find the exact moment, the exact time code. But yeah, it was something to the effect of thanking everybody for a wonderful time, as Carol's noting here, and I'm noting here as well. I think we heard about the same thing. Yeah, a little. It's kind of you know, it's kind of secondary, obviously, to the subject matter at hand that we have. Curtis Reeves being found not guilty on both charges. That, of course, is the big news from this. But I understand social media is going to grab on to irregularities, and this is as irregular as anything you'll ever see from a judge in a murder trial. It's pretty out there. Let's get to some of the other comments that came in there afterwards. He, Alex, Carol, hashtag AJB. Yes, the judge's words were shocking. Others are saying this too, that the judge's words were just straight, quite bizarre. Laura Jeffers, hashtag AJB murder, who got away with it? How unjust. One of the opinions from one of our commenters here on WFLA Now's Facebook Live comment section. We're also plucking some comments at a YouTube Live as well. Paula Coffer, hashtag AJB. The prosecution theory that Reeves killed a man because he was mad that he had popcorn tossed on him just wasn't believable. Courtney Scott, hashtag HeyJB. I agree with the odd closing words from the judge. It had been a long day and maybe just an awkward slip while trying to find the right words. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think this is right. Because you say you have a wonderful time after a pleasant meal or, going out with friends. Kind of strange in that moment that we heard that from Judge Susan Barthel. Matthew Cherry, hashtag AJB. It was the right verdict, even though the judge didn't seem like she knew what she was doing. Again, this could have been, this is an opinion from one of our commenters. It could have been mental fatigue accruing in that moment. But Matthew Cherry seems to not be really in favor of the judge in this particular case. Nikita Hamilton, hashtag HJB. Are we setting a bad precedent with this verdict? I'll leave this for our commenters to determine. This is why we're live on WFLA Now, to have these conversations in the aftermath of significantly groundbreaking sort of news for the Tampa Bay area. And now I say groundbreaking because it is sort of breaking ground in the conversation of self-defense cases here in the state of Florida. Is this case now going to be in the textbooks? Is this case going to be referenced in countless other future self-defense cases? Are they going to look at Florida versus Reeves in the future and say, this is what happened, these are the facts of the case, this man was found not guilty? And is that going to establish precedent, legal precedent, for future court proceedings involving murder, manslaughter, and basically terrible acts of crime in our state? It's a fascinating question, and one that I'll let our commenters kind of come in on, and feel free to comment at us and continue the conversation as we await any feeds from outside the courtroom. There's no feeds right now, and the reason that there are no feeds is because this is just again news that is 8 years in the making, and I think everyone is just taking a moment to process everything that has transpired. I'm going to step away for 30 seconds to get an update on the actual status of any post-verdict press conferences taking place in Dade City outside the courthouse. Back in 30.
Breaking news on WFLA now. Here is JV Buno.
Curtis Reeves being found not guilty on all charges. Second-degree murder, aggravated battery. As now reaction expected to come in here shortly. 8 years after the shooting death of Chad Olson in a Wesley Chapel movie theater. Hey folks, JB back here with you, just conferring with our team to get things kind of straightened away. And we do hope to have reaction here for you at some point. There is no imminent press conference because everyone is still reeling and grappling with this news, depending on what side you're on. You're either elated with relief and joy that the jury came to this verdict, or you're shocked and potentially maybe emotionally crippled from this news, if especially you're with the Olson family, because this is not the news that you had wanted in seeing this over the last 8 years. Think about where you were in your life 8 years ago. That's how long it's been between the act that we're talking about, that movie theater shooting that claimed Chad Olson's life, and the verdict, the resolution, the awaiting justice for those in the Olson family. That's 8 years, or awaiting exoneration for those in the Reeves family. So we're anticipating some courtroom reaction here, or courthouse reaction here soon, but let's get back to some of the comments that are coming in, everybody, on WFLA Now. I know that there's a lot of folks who have questions, a lot of folks that want their voice to be heard, and we'll continue to go over some of the comments. All right, using hashtag AJB, we can feature your comment. Tracy, you're up next. We'll get to Tracy's comment momentarily. Deanna, we're going to get to your comment as well. Let's start with those two. Tracy Fender, hashtag AJB. This was the right verdict. Everyone has the blank to protect their life. Rick and Dino did a phenomenal job. This man has been on house arrest for 8 years. It's a tragedy. Someone had to die. No one won in this situation. Folks, give me just 1 second. I think we're going to be bringing in some legal expertise here, folks, to help break down the really the aftermath of this decision, and going back to this comment from Nikita, the precedent that this sets in Florida, how this impacts self-defense cases in Florida. I'm going to be very curious to hear from our guest, whom we anticipate shortly on WFLA Now. Deanna Lynn, hashtag HeyJB. I am in complete shock. I did not think it was proven that this was self-defense, and I can't believe the judge said congratulations at the end. Yeah, we're all stored. I think a lot of us are just. Did we all hear that from the judge? It's just, again, just kind of odd etiquette. And other commenters have brought up whether that was just a result of mental fatigue and mental grind, but I can't deny that still so many of our commenters are talking about the choice of words by the judge. We're going to be joined here, folks, in just a moment by Bryant Camareno of Camareno Law here in the Tampa Bay area. He has been on both sides of the courtroom as far as being a prosecutor and as far as being a criminal defense attorney. I'm very curious to hear what Bryant has to say. He'll be joining us in just a few moments. Let's get to some of the other comments that are coming in. And I'm seeing a lot of comments. Okay. Yeah, I think that there's just, the number one comment that I'm seeing, at least with hashtag KJB, is just the fact that 10-4. The fact that, the judge's words are still, people are still processing that, because again, it's just, and my job here, let me explain. My job here is to be a reflection of what you're saying in the social media comment section, to kind of give folks an idea as to what the temperature is on a particular news story and how people feel in response to a news story. And in addition to that, answer questions and be a information resource for you. I can't help but point out that there's just a ton of comments about the judge's final comments in this court proceeding, in this murder trial, and a lot of folks are just pointing out that it was bizarre and highly irregular. Got it. Okay. All right. We've got reaction from the courthouse. Let's go back live. Let's listen in.
This is a day that's long been coming. I will tell you that these moments are the greatest moments, not only for my client, obviously, but for the great team of lawyers that I had on this case. Dino Michaels, who's done just a phenomenal job in this trial. Where's Karina? And Matt Funderburg. These are lawyers that worked tirelessly for us. I can't tell you the number of hours that they've poured to this case. And I think this victory, this acquittal, sends a message out to the community. And that message is that you can't abuse the elderly. And we believed all along that Mr. Reeves that day was capped in that theater, and he did the right thing in defending himself. I know he looks forward to a wonderful retirement, or continue of your retirement, and I can't tell you how happy we all are. We were confident, and let me tell you, all the talking heads from Court TV who indicated we were never going to win, for all my colleagues in Hillsborough County that likewise gave us no chance. Here we are. We're at the steps of victory, and Mr. Reeves is a free man, which is the most important.
Mr. Reeves, what does that freedom mean to you now?
This is great. It's been a long 8 years, and I couldn't wait for it to be over with. I'm very proud of my team of lawyers here that did a fantastic job in bringing out the truth, and hopefully you guys will put the truth in the paper for a change.
You certainly have been through a lot over the last 8 years. What was it like having to wait that long to get to this day?
It was very trying, not just for me, but for my family as well. So it was a tough time for all of us, and with the restrictions and all the things that went on over the years, it was very difficult to deal with.
And you've certainly sat through your share of trials as a law enforcement officer. You've been there. What was it like to be on the other side?
It was a completely different ballgame and something that I've never encountered, and hopefully I never will again.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
And when you heard not guilty, what was the first thing that went to your mind?
I'm not sure anything's gone to it just yet, but I'm working on it.
And hard to ignore the Olsons walking out, visibly upset. Anything you would say to them?
It was a sad day for everybody on both sides. It never should have happened. I never wanted it to happen. I never planned for it. I never even in my wildest dreams ever thought anything like this would ever happen. And it, like I say, I feel as touching for them as I do for my own family.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I got it.
It's a little harder to see and walk them so
What? How did that car leave?
He was asking for team coverage. Not at this point. You know, I mean,
Go home. I got you.
we're pretty proud.
No, I said, give me the car. I'll go put the package together. I can handle a verdict. It's not my first rodeo.
So I'm going to take 19 home tonight because 11 is just wrapped up.
Yeah, so that's okay. Jeff, were you in the courtroom or were you?
No,
No, that's.
Breaking news on WFLA Now. Here is J.B. Buno.
Curtis Reeves, there in court. Curtis Reeves walking out a free man. And you heard his comments and a little bit from the victorious side of the courtroom as Curtis Reeves found not guilty on all charges. JB here with you live, everybody, on WFLA Now. Really looking forward to hearing from Bryant Camerano, who's coming on next here, everybody, on WFLA Now. In fact, why don't we bring in Mr. Camerano? Bryant, good to have you back on WFLA Now. Good to see you. Your reaction to this case, really want to hear from you as a legal expert here in the Tampa Bay area. Is this the verdict that you were expecting? What was your initial reaction to the news coming in that Curtis Reeves found not guilty on both charges?
You know, I think that whenever there's an acquittal on a murder trial, I think there's always a state of shock from spectators and observers. But there's also this element that I attribute the acquittal to three things that the defense team did. Number one, when they laid the foundation through one of the their own experts.
This meeting is being recorded.
That one of the law enforcement, that law enforcement failed to pursue certain investigative leads, like recreate the crime scene, recreate the lighting conditions. So that was number one. Number two was when Mr. Reeves himself testified, and I think he showed the jurors that he was, an elderly person who was not the hothead that the prosecution was trying to make him out to be. And then, of course, the closing arguments, where Mr. Escobar spent nearly over almost 3 hours laying the foundation that that Mr. Reeves had an exemplary record as a law enforcement officer, as a security officer at Busch Gardens, without any evidence that he was the hothead, again, that the prosecution was trying to lay. So yes, did it come as a shock? I think whenever there's an acquittal, there's always a state of shock. But at the same time, no real surprise, because again, the defense team did such a great job of laying a foundation that Mr. Reeves was not the hothead that the state made him out to be. So I think it was a great trial and a great defense tactic. And so I think that congratulations are in order.
Let me ask you this question, Bryant. Did the defense, in your opinion, win this case, or did the prosecutors lose it?
No, I think the defense won the case. The prosecution had everything that they need. I mean, they had everything they needed to convict. They had the video, they had eyewitness testimony. So it's just unfortunate for the state, Mr. Reeves came across as a likable person. And again, I think that Mr. Escobar's closing argument, emphasizing this lack of a record of a hothead cop that the prosecution was trying to make it out to be. So no, I think that the state did the best they could with what they had, but the defense won this through and through just with their tactic. It was a great strategy. Again, pointing out absence of lack of evidence and lack of investigative pursuit of, the fact that he didn't pursue a lead, putting Mr. Reeves on the stand, and the closing arguments. Again, I think even though some of the people were commenting saying it was way too long, Mr. Escobar is correct. He had to hit you want to get one shot at this. So he had to hit every detail, and he did a very effective job of doing so.
So when jurors are deliberating and discussing this, and they did so, Bryant, for more than 3 hours, what do you think is the number one thing that they are pointing to in the deliberation room as the reason that they came to the conclusion of not guilty as the verdict?
I mean, I think it's clear that, the jurors are told sympathy is not something they can consider. There's no doubt that they sympathize with the victim's wife. There's no doubt. And there's no doubt that they sympathize with Curtis Reeves' family. So I think they ignored all that the way they should have and looked at the absence of any evidence of support that Mr. Reeves was this hothead, looking for trouble, went out there trying to start a fight so that he can end up using his gun. And one of the other things that Mr. Escobar hit the nail on the head was he is allowed to carry a firearm as a retired law enforcement officer. In fact, the law says he should carry. So again, this is not a young kid, a young punk going out there looking for trouble, looking for a reason to use the gun. He just happened to have the gun, and the jurors believed that objectively, Mr. Reeves felt his life was in danger. The jury believed it. And so again, kudos to the defense for highlighting that.
So many commenters, and that we're live streaming, and we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and there's a lot of folks watching right now asking questions. But as the trial played out, one of the questions that was asked repeatedly was, why is there, and you're one of the best equipped to answer this question, why is so much being played into his decorated law enforcement career? This is somebody who has really a sterling resume when it comes to the many, many years that he devoted to serving the Tampa Bay area, to serving Tampa police, and to serving the people of his community as a law enforcement officer, even going as far to train other officers, even going as far to help in the early stages of the first SWAT teams here in the Tampa Bay area with Tampa police. And there were a lot of folks that were saying, Bryant, in our comment section, saying, why is so much being made about his decorated law enforcement career from decades ago, when really it's the actions of how he carried himself in court that day that should really be examined and put under the microscope? Do you think that developing this, the backstory and his history as a decorated law enforcement officer played a role in the jury's decision here tonight?
Absolutely. So, and we also have to look at one other thing. This is a Pasco County jury. Okay, this is the Pasco County made up of people that are mainly retirees. I'm not sure what the makeup was of these jurors, but from what sources were telling me, most of these jurors had concealed weapons or were weapon owners themselves. So if they had weapons themselves, then I think they felt the need, there could be a need at some point to defend themselves. Now, so with that mindset, you've got jurors that believe in the right to bear arms. Any other jurisdiction, any other county may not have had the same mindset. That's number one. Number two, yes, absolutely. The fact that he is a decorated law enforcement officer, these are law-abiding citizens that are serving as jurors that have sworn to both uphold the law and abide by the law. So I think they looked at him, Mr. Reeves, as someone who was their protector at some point during his younger years. He protected their community, and they looked at that. So I think absolutely, by overplaying his exemplary record, the fact that he was a trainer, I think the jurors looked at him and said, hey, this is a guy that used to protect us, and perhaps, again, without looking at sympathy, and perhaps what he did that day may have been wrong, but not necessarily illegal. And I think that that's what the jurors, absolutely, his record had to come into play. Again, this was not some young, for lack of a better description, punk who's out there with a gun illegally looking for trouble. This is a man who took his family to watch a movie, and unfortunately somebody died. We're not taking that away from what happened, but the facts did not meet the law the way the jury was instructed.
Let's flip it around and now talk about the other side, Bryant. We're talking about the Olson family. I'm not sure if you were watching in the moment when they had the cutaway shot of Nicole Olson, who visibly shaking, visibly emotionally distraught. And there are going to be those who are asking a very, very important question on what is there justice for Chad Olson? What the family has been waiting 8 years to get this verdict. What is it like for the Olson family tonight when they feel, in their estimation, that the legal system failed them because they didn't hit on the second-degree murder charge, they didn't hit on the aggravated battery charge, no charges, and we have Curtis Reeves walking out as a free person when they have to go home, and the 43-year-old husband to Nicole Chad Olson, 43 8 years ago, he would have been 51 now, he's not there. You have one man who's there, who gets to enjoy the rest of his life being 79 years old, while the other side has to deal now with this grief of knowing that he was shot in a movie theater one day and he's no longer with us, and that there was no one, and there was no charge or anything that's stuck in a court of law that is justice to them.
You know, I have no doubts. I can tell you right now, I have no doubt that they sympathized with her. There's no question about that. And the fact that they took 3 hours, I guarantee you they read through those jury instructions and emphasized and reminded them sympathy is not a factor here. But there was something that Mr. Escobar said in his closing arguments. He threw out this concept that this perhaps should belong in a civil courtroom. I don't know if anybody caught that. I caught it. And if the jurors caught it, you know, there's different types of justice. You know, there's justice in terms of punishment against Mr. Reeves. And unfortunately, you know, some people call it there's cash justice. I'm not in any way suggesting that the Olson family was looking for money out of this. But I wouldn't doubt that the jurors thought to themselves, look, there is another courtroom, there is another venue where there can be remedy, just like in the O.J. Simpson case, acquitted in the criminal case, but found guilty in the civil case. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the jurors thought to themselves, look, he didn't commit a crime, but there's other forms of justice that maybe another jury in another venue and another judge might make her whole. And even though you can never replace someone, a loved one, with money, I can almost safely assume that had to have come into play in their deliberation as they read the instructions, but also keeping in mind again that Mr. Escobar brought this up and he planted that seed effectively. And I wouldn't be surprised if the jurors thought to themselves, hey, there's other venues here, but for right here, right now, before us, he's not guilty of the crime that's been presented by this prosecution.
Let's get to some of the questions that have come in from our social media audience. Brian, we brought up a couple of these on our live stream, and I want to go back to a couple of the ones where I said, wow, it would be really great to have some legal analysis on this question. Let's go to Nikita Hamilton's question that we had up earlier, and she asked, are we setting a bad precedent with this verdict? I'm going to ask you this. I mean, this is a question that, from her opinion, is a bad precedent. I'm just going to ask this question to you just straightforward from a legal perspective, and just strike out the word bad for a second. And Nikita, sure. It's because I want to ask it to Brian as objectively as possible. And Nikita would then be asking, are we setting a precedent with this verdict? Does this have now legal ramifications going forward on other cases here in the state of Florida? Is it just Pasco County? Will other cases in Florida point to this case in the future? How does this alter other self-defense cases going forward in the Sunshine State, Brian?
I think the answer is no. It's not going to set any precedents at all. And the reason is each case is different. Each factual basis is different. You're not going to have a 71-year-old man, retired police officer with an exemplary record, doing this every day. I don't see that happening. And there are shooting cases every day. You can walk into almost any county, any courtroom in the state of Florida, and there's always a shooting case. Some are acquitted and some are convicted. And it just so happened that this fact pattern with this jury, again, in Pasco County, with most of them, again, without knowing the makeup, most of these are retirees from other counties, other states. I don't think it's going to set a precedent at all. I think what it will do, though, is it will send a message to gun owners. Listen, do we want to be in the position that Mr. Reeves was in and fight a case for 3, 4, 5, 6, or in this case, 8 years and possibly face 25 to life? Do we want to be in this position? I think, if anything, the opposite. I think gun owners are going to think very carefully before they use their weapons. So I think it may have a positive effect because nobody wants to be in the position that Mr. Reeves was in. So I think it's quite the opposite.
Let's get to another one of our comments from earlier from Deanna Lynn Bryant. She said, hashtag HJB, I'm in complete shock. I did not think that it was proven that this was self-defense, and I can't believe the judge said congratulations at the end. We're gonna play back that moment here in just a second, but I want to go back to Deanna saying, I did not think it was proven that this was self-defense. What's your reaction to that, just the self-defense component of this particular trial?
All right, good. That's a great question. So she's right in the sense that if you assert, if the defense team asserts an affirmative defense, entrapment or self-defense, the burden is on the defense to prove, again, whatever that affirmative defense is, in this case, self-defense. So it's possible that the jury didn't believe self-defense, but quite frankly, without interviewing the jurors, we're not sure what their mindset was. You guys may have heard of jury pardons, jury nullification. It's possible that the jury said, you know what, I don't necessarily think it was self-defense, but I also don't think that he committed a crime. So it's possible that they weren't mutually exclusive, meaning it's possible they didn't think it was self-defense, they just didn't think that he committed a crime. And so it's without interviewing these jurors, it's really hard to tell, whether or not they actually believed he was defending himself, or they just thought the state has not proven the crime. Because again, if you assert affirmative defense, then it's up to the state to rebut that and show that it wasn't self-defense. But it's hard to tell, hard to answer that question without interviewing the jurors, and maybe one day they'll come forward and answer that question. But it's possible they just thought, no, we don't think it was a crime here, and we still don't think it was self-defense. It just wasn't a crime, and then they just found not guilty.
Let's go now to the second part of this comment from Deanna. And Brian, I don't know if you heard it, the final words from Judge Susan Barthel in this case, but she said, and others, we had just a high volume of comments about Judge Barthel's parting words with the courtroom, and kind of it was unsettling to some people. And I noted too that some of her parting commentary was a little strange. I found it on my phone. It's a bit easier to scrub through on a phone than it is to find it on our system here, because we're dealing with so much footage at all times. So I'm going to play it back on my cell phone this moment. I want everyone to listen, including you, Bryant, and just tell me what you make of the judge's final words here in the courtroom.
Free to go. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful time. Good luck.
What do you make of that, Bryant?
Okay, I can tell you right now, I've tried 217 jury trials, and I've never seen a judge not congratulate both sides. And in this case, she actually says it, congratulations, and I think I forgot how she phrased it. I don't think it was congratulations to just Mr. Reeves. I've known Judge Barthel for many years. I think she's one of the better judges to have. I think she's very fair-minded. So number one, the congratulation aspect, I think that it's not unusual. Judges do it all the time. In fact, sometimes they go out of the way to say, thank you to both sides for being professionals and so forth. So the congratulation part, I didn't have a problem with it because, again, it looks like it was directed to both sides. Now, the good luck, again, I think just good luck, whether she was directing it to Mr. Reeves or to both sides, that's hard to tell. But I don't think it's unprofessional for the judge to have made that comment because, again, she's a human being, and I think she was really complimenting the hard work that both sides put into the case.
Bryant Camerano joining us here, everybody, on WFLA Now. If you have any questions, you can use the hashtag you see on the right side of your screen. You can use hashtag HeyBryant, and we'll try to bring up a couple of comments for, I think we'll have Bryant for about another 10 or so minutes before we have to let him get to it. But Bryant, what are some other observations that you made over the course of this trial? I'd like to ask you about the surveillance footage, and I don't know if you saw the reflection in the footage about whether or not, now Curtis Reeves, center of your screen there, has said that he was struck with a cell phone, and there was evidence brought forth as to whether or not that was the phone being reflected in the surveillance video, or whether or not that was reflective material on his shoe. Where does that component of the trial come in your estimation?
Well, I think that there may have been some doubt, reasonable doubt, as to whether or not an object was actually thrown. There was one, as you may recall, there was testimony that his glasses were askew. And I think Mr. Reeves, may have used those exact words, and there may have been redness in one of his eyes. And so at some point, something did make contact with Mr. Reeves. So I think there was reasonable doubt. I think the state tried to emphasize it was not a phone. There would have been much more damage. but something did make contact with Mr. Reeves. Now, whether it was, his own hands, someone else's hands, but there was undisputed, unrebutted testimony that his glasses were askew and they had red mark in one of his eyes. So something happened. So I think the jurors were looking at this idea that I don't think the jurors were looking so much that he was actually hit. It's the perception that he could have been hit or that he could have been attacked by these other means, fists, through other physical confrontation. So I think that the idea about this phone being the weapon, I think that was thrown out there. I don't know if the jurors were convinced he was actually attacked by the phone. I think they were more convinced that Mr. Reeves' perception was that this gentleman is standing up, he's 6 feet tall, he's hovering and looming over me. That's, I think, what the jurors were looking at. And again, without knowing, did they feel he was defending himself, or did they just feel that he didn't meet the elements of manslaughter or second-degree murder? I think that that's really what the jurors were looking at, not so much the phone. I think there was doubt as to what happened, but there's no question that something did happen, again, for the glasses to be askew and to have some redness in one of his eyes.
Let's get to the number one comment. When I asked for questions, Bryant, the comment section lit up for questions for you, and there's really one that people are asking about more than any other, and it is going back to Judge Barthel's parting words there in the courtroom, and addressing the part where she said, quote unquote, about a wonderful time. Would you mind if I played it back here for you one more time, and maybe you can address
sure.
it?
And I do. You refresh my recollection, but go ahead.
Yeah. Let's play back again.
Verdict of not guilty as to count 1 and count 2. You are free to go. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful time.
Wonderful time. Our commenters want to hear from you about that choice of words there by the judge.
Understood. And you know what? And I forgot to bring that up. And so, listen, again, bad choice of words. Judge Barthel is an excellent judge, been on the bench for many, many, many years. But I can tell you right now, this was an exciting trial to watch. Even someone with in my case, 28 years of experience, and many of my colleagues with just as much, if not more experience, were just as fascinated by the trial. And the judge, again, perhaps poor choice of words, but it's sad that somebody died, but it was a source of entertainment. I'm not saying it was a source of entertainment for Judge Barthel, but I think her bad choice of words, but she made it, I think that she's complimenting both parties for making it such a pleasant experience. And again, I can't read her mind, but this could have been a much uglier trial. I've seen parties go at it toe-to-toe, and these guys were at it. I mean, both sides were at it, but they kept it civilized. So I just think that that's what she meant by that. It was a wonderful in the sense that it could have been such a much more contentious trial, like many of us have lived or experienced. I think that's what she meant by that. And I just think it was just a poor choice of words, especially when you have someone who, on the losing side, someone who lost their family members. Yeah, I can understand why they might be offended by that, but I don't believe the judge meant to offend anyone at all.
That's what I was going to ask you, is if you're Nicole Olson and you just heard this news and you're emotionally distraught and you're hearing it described as a quote-unquote wonderful time by the judge, I think that there are many out there who would call that, salt in the wound, a very, very fresh wound that she has just learned. There has to be a losing side in a particular case like this, and in this case, we see Chad Olson's wife just shaking in just an emotional overload in that moment. So let's just kind of talk about this now. Going forward, is the Curtis Reeves trial over? He walks out a free man. Is there any other legal options now for the state? Is there anything going forward? What is the aftermath of this verdict in your estimation, Brian?
Yeah, as far as Mr. Reeves is concerned, under the Constitution, double jeopardy, he's done. The state's not going to be able to do anything with him. I can't think of anything creative they can do to come up with to try to come after him again. As far as the families, the Olson family, they have an excellent lawyer working with them, TJ Grimaldi, great lawyer. I've known him for many years as well. So there may have been, again, there may be a civil aspect to this as well. I haven't spoken to him on that issue. So as far as Mr. Reeves, he is unfortunately, or from his point of view, fortunately, unfortunately for the victims side, he gets to move on with his life, and that's the end of that. As far as the Olson family, I think their next pursuit is going to be civil action But again, that's never going to bring back her husband, the father of her children. And that's the sad part. So, but to answer your specific question, that's the end. I don't think we'll hear much from Mr. Reeves. I think he'll move on and enjoy the rest of his life in retirement. And then, and that'll be the end of that as far as Mr. Reeves is concerned.
Bryant, you've tried and you've been part of countless, thousands of cases, correct? I mean, thousands of cases in the Tampa Bay area. You've been on with us before. You have been on WFLA News Channel 8 with us before many, many times. You've tried a lot of cases in this area, and I just want to hear from you before we let you go. And we appreciate you taking some time out of your Friday night to join us here and provide us with some analysis. But when you look back and people bring up this case to you in weeks from now, months from now, years from now, what's the biggest takeaway in your estimation from this case, the Curtis Reeves trial, Florida versus Reeves?
If you're a gun owner, please, I am not a gun owner. I don't know. I don't have a concealed weapons permit. I don't know, what it's like to have to possess a gun. I've shot guns before when I was a probation officer decades ago. I think the biggest lesson to anyone who's watching this, listening to this, if you're a gun owner, be responsible. I didn't, again, if it says you're prohibited from taking a gun, that's a whole nother issue into certain areas. He was allowed to have the gun. But I think as a lesson is use it as a very last resort. I think that, whether or not, if you think about it, Mr. Reeves was acquitted, and I think they took into consideration his age, his background, his police training. Given the same facts, someone my age, I may not be acquitted. Okay, so because I'm younger and I may be able to defend myself by other means. So I think if you're a gun owner, just think twice before picking it out, before using it, because if not, you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be facing 25 to life in prison, and you may not get the same results as Mr. Reeves. Because again, as I mentioned, you can walk into any courtroom in any county, and there's shooting cases every single day, and there's a lot of people that are convicted. And self-defense is argued, but not everyone has the same mindset. The jurors don't have the same mindset as the Pasco County jurors, and you may not be in the same physical position or condition, as Mr. Reeves. So I think the key is just use it as a last resort if you're going to use it at all. I'm not a gun owner, so I'm not going to sit there and pretend to know all about gun rights. All I know is it can kill, and a life has been lost over popcorn, over text messaging. That's the bottom line.
Bryant Camerano Law, legal expert for us here at WFLA News Channel 8. Bryant, we always appreciate your time, especially when you come in on, let's say, a Friday night. We know that your time is valuable. Thank you so much for your time, and all the best to you.
And everyone as well, be safe, and thank you very much, sir. Take care. All
righty. Bryant Camerano, folks, back here with you live, everybody, on WFLA Now. As we go through some of the final comments, this is going to be a last call for your #HeyJB questions, comments. We're going to try to go through as many as we can as we wrap up our Curtis Reeves trial coverage. Again, that coverage culminating with 2 words, twice, not guilty for Curtis Reeves on second-degree murder, on aggravated battery. So if you've been screaming or pounding your keyboard to get your voice heard and you really want to have your voice heard, we're going to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes just giving you an opportunity to have your voice heard or to ask a question as we kind of go through some of the final comments here, everybody, on Facebook Live and on YouTube Live. I see that a lot of folks joining us. Let's go over, just check in on YouTube really quickly and say hello to Renee, Lee, Chris Griffin, LN23, Missy Stoll, Katie5 Love, Sandra George, seeing a lot of folks. And I got to be honest, seeing a lot of language I can't put on this particular live stream because there is a lot of angry language. And I think that there are probably more people in our Facebook Live and YouTube Live comment section that are shocked and opposed to this news rather than for it. Perhaps they're just staying here with us in the YouTube Live and Facebook Live comment section because they're just still in disbelief. While if you were of the opinion that Curtis Reeves should be found not guilty, perhaps you have since signed off on this particular live stream and have moved on to the rest of your Friday night. Regardless, we're here with you live on WFLA Now to read through some of your reaction using #HeyJB. let's see here. Looking for some comments. Justin, I can't read that comment. Come on, you know that by now. Liz saying hashtag HeyJB, justice has been served on YouTube Live. I'll come back to YouTube. J Cal, hashtag HeyJB, do you think the prosecution should have had the jury visit the actual crime scene? I don't know. I'm not sure where. That's a very bizarre question. It's up to the prosecutors, the state attorney's office, to present that evidence in a court of law, and to do so through. That's not something that would be something regular or expected to be able to visit the scene. Not to mention too that's 8 years afterwards, so you can't really visit 8 years afterwards. There would just be so many. You get what I'm saying. I'm going to go back to Facebook Live. Wow. Nancy Lyons saying, and we'll bring up this comment. This is, I'll just bring up this comment and I will allow it to speak for itself. Hashtag HeyJB. What is wrong with Florida jurors? Casey Anthony, George Zimmerman, and now I'm embarrassed to be a Floridian. There are, I think, again, I'm speaking for, there's a lot of folks who are lingering here on Facebook Live and YouTube Live because of this disbelief that is settling in over this. I think there were a lot of folks out there that really thought that this was clear cut and dry, that this was going to be guilty, a swift guilty verdict. And I think that if you're hanging out on this live stream, there's a lot of folks out there that are just still in disbelief. And Nancy commenting and connecting this to other major high-profile cases. I'll say this: I'm not sure that Curtis Reeves is on the same level as Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, or of course the Casey Anthony case. Those cases were the international microscope was honed in on Florida in such a massive way. This one, I don't think that the attention was that intense. But Nancy drawing a parallel, and you can agree or disagree with her in the comment section here, folks. Chelsea, I'll bring up this. This is a question. Hashtag HeyJB, how did they come up with a unanimous verdict in 3 hours? Seems like a really short amount of time. Hold on, I want to hit a button. Listen, verdicts can come in after an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 3 days. It might seem like a short amount of time, but when you have a jury that is seeing a case from a similar vantage point, these conversations can move along quite quickly. Let's also not forget, no one wants to be here on the weekend. No one wants to have to abide by all of the necessary rules that come with not being able to talk about the case and not being able to be exposed to news media and over the course of a weekend. They did that last weekend. They didn't want to have to do that this weekend. I think that there was probably very much there was this notion of let's talk and come to a verdict. But listen, one of the 5 or one of the 6, let's say 5 could have been in unison. One of them could have resulted in a hung jury, and that could have been an extended process. But it would appear that all 6 saw through a similar lens, a similar vantage point, and they came to the conclusion of not guilty. 2 or 3 more here before we have to get going. We've answered this before, but really quickly, Karen, hashtag HeyJB, why only 6 jurors? That's standard in Florida, unless it's a capital case. 12 jurors in a capital case. Go back to YouTube. Say hi to YouTube. Liz Morris saying that OJ's verdict came in at about 4 hours. It was 6 people and only 2 counts. That's probably why it was so quick. Yeah, when a jury takes days or an entirety of a day to come up with a verdict, and it can go to 1 a.m, that sticks in your brain more than a case that has a relatively quick verdict. So I think that there are a lot of folks out there that are surprised by how quickly this one came in. But again, you've got 6 that are singing the sort of similar tune as far as how they interpreted the evidence and the testimony. It's not going to take as long as you would think, especially as our commenter just noted that it was 2 counts. So not as complicated, and maybe it was more clear-cut than it was made out to be or believed to be by those out in the public. Let's see here. Barb Olson. I want to bring this one up on screen. Barb Olson joining us on YouTube. Hello to you, Barb. Hope that you're having a good Friday night or Saturday morning. We got folks joining us in the UK and on the western end of Europe here as well. Let's get to this comment. You heard about sympathy coming into play and about Brian Camerano talking about the jurors themselves and being Pasco County jurors who might have seen sympathy with, or might have had sympathy for Curtis Reeves. Barb Olson saying #KJB. I think the jury just didn't want to send an old man to prison. 79 years old. Could this have come into play? We can't say. You just cannot say. The jurors themselves know. And the jurors have the right to tell their story and give their recollection of events and how they interpreted the testimony and evidence presented in this case. But by no means can we sit here and say that this is. But for what it's worth, and I just want to point out something that our commenter is saying, that Barb is wondering if it has to do with the fact of his age, being 79 years old. And let's not forget that if he was convicted of that first charge, you're talking about going away for at least 25 years, maybe, and that's not maybe, it's in all likelihood the remainder of your life, and that would be the most minimum sentence available to you on that charge. So we'll take 1 or 2 more, and then we really got to get going here, folks. Oh, there's Twitter. I'm not seeing too many on Twitter though. We'll come back to YouTube. Let's see. I'm just giving everybody one last opportunity. No problemo on YouTube says #KJB. Do you agree with the verdict? This is not for me to answer. Our coverage is a reflection of how you feel in our social media comment section. So I always do appreciate there's some very kind-hearted and well-intentioned questions that people ask me. What did you think? You were listening to the case. What did you think of the verdict? And again, this isn't about me. I'm going to remain I'm going to remain professional here and just, again, make this about you and your coverage here, everybody, or make this coverage for you on WFLA now. Matthew Ehrlich, this is the last one we're going to take. Is Nicole Olson going to speak or expected to speak? Before the trial reached this day, Nicole Olson had informed members of our team here at WFLA that she was going to speak in the aftermath of the verdict being read. I have not seen, but if it is going to be, if there is going to be reaction from Nicole Olson, it'll be on our newscast tonight on WFLA News Channel 8 right here in Tampa Bay. We're going to have coverage from 8 on Your Side's Justin Checker, who's going to be joining us. And you can watch by going to WFLA.com and watching our 11 o'clock newscast. It starts in 35 minutes exactly from right now. So you go to and I'll show you exactly how to do it. You go over to WFLA.com. On the top tab, you'll see video, and you'll see Watch WFLA News Channel 8's newscast. And that starts in 35 minutes at 11 o'clock Eastern time, our television coverage. A lot could happen between now and then, but this is our opportunity to end our streaming coverage here for you folks and send things over to our television coverage on your NBC station in the Tampa Bay area. That is WFLA News Channel 8 on your side. If you want to read the latest on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, if you want additional coverage, you can click on the link in the description on this video. It'll take you over to WFLA.com, the WFLA app, where we have more on Curtis Reeves being found not guilty in the shooting trial. I'm going to head over and spend the next half hour or so speaking with our Instagram audience. On WFLA Now, we are unable to go live directly on Instagram, but there's still a sizable amount of people out there on Instagram who seek coverage. So on my WFLA JB Instagram page, I'm about to go live and talk a little bit more about Curtis Reeves being found not guilty in Pasco County Court. And we'll kind of have a little bit more of a chat going on there. Don't want to alienate that audience. But for those of you joining us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, you can click on the link in the description on this video. I think it's also in the pinned comment below. It'll take you over to our coverage on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, where we'll also have a live stream of the 11 o'clock newscast with a report from Justin Shecker on all of the reaction from Pasco County in the aftermath of Curtis Reeves, 79 years old, being found not guilty in the Pasco County movie theater shooting trial. Folks, I'm JB Buno. I'm going to head over to Instagram Live in just a couple of minutes. Click on the link for the latest. And thanks for joining us here live on WFLA Now.